So we
Yes.
are good to go. All right. So good morning for everyone in Dubai, afternoon, evening. I hope everyone's doing great. We are very excited for this session today. So I want to start off by asking you a question. And if you can answer that in the chat. So where is everyone joining us from? We had a huge subscription from around the world. I saw that there, but those of you who are live with us on Facebook, on Zoom, which city are you in at this point in time? Oh la la. So
ISA,
yeah.
Dubai. I love Jeddah. I visited Jeddah a couple of times. Also Sharjah, fantastic.
London. Hi,
Norway.
Woo.
Great.
Amazing. It's
Cirencester. Oh, it's Ali. Hi, Ali. Ali's basically like my niece. Good to see extended family joining as well. Hi, Ali.
That's awesome. So as we can see, there are people from basically all around the world that are joining us, and that is super exciting. We're going to be talking about how to hack the future. So let's get some formalities out of the way. We would like to take this next hour to ask Terence, and I'm really going to make the most of this, Terence. I want to learn.
All the questions.
Yeah. So I want to leave with like tangible tactics and strategies. I have a pen and paper next to me, and I really want to pick your brain. So I welcome you to also ask questions in the chat box, and we will be picking up a few questions along the way. But if it gets very heated, then we might just leave it till the end. And as promised, we also have 10 copies of the book to give away.
Yes.
Thank you, Terence. I love
My pleasure.
So that's the book.
Delivered by hand. I'm only joking.
And so one of the criteria to who we're going to give away the book is to the person who shows most engagement and participates the most. We will be announcing it after this session on our LinkedIn. Terence? Executive decision.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. Great. My name is Saana Azzam, and I'm the Chief Inspiration Officer at MENA Speakers. We are the leading speakers agency in the region. And so we have been hosting a set of webinars and series to you as a way to give back to our community, upskill you, and make sure that you are future ready for the new normal. And so it's kind of been leading up to this moment here where we have such a high profile speaker. I'm very excited to have him on board. Allow me to introduce him. Yes. Terence Mauri is the founder of Hack Future Lab, a global think tank that helps leaders win the future. He is the author of not one, but 2 global bestsellers. I don't know how you do it. And he has been described as an outspoken and influential thinker by Thinkers 50. Those of you who don't know who Thinkers 50 are, you should know them. They are the ranking authority of top business thinkers in the world. And Terence helps entrepreneur mentors. He mentors entrepreneurs at London Business School and MIT. He is on a mission to help leaders build daring and resilient futures. He is one of the most in-demand disruption thinkers in the world, and we are so proud to represent him under the umbrella of MENA Speakers. Please join me in giving him a very strong and warm virtual applause.
Thank you so much, Saana. What a wonderful introduction. Thank you.
I'm really excited for this. For so many.
Me too. This is like a double espresso first thing in the morning. I love
it. You bet. And you are joining us from?
So today I'm looking out of the window. It's cold, it's chilly, it's London.
Okay.
Yes. About 12 degrees. Which is really tough for me because I'm half Italian. I need the sun. I need minimum 25.
Good. Well, we hope we'll get you out here as soon as possible. There's plenty of fun to go around. I'm just going to jump right in because, like I said, I was very excited about these questions and really, quite selfish about it. I want to make the most out of it for my own leadership skills and improvement. And for the audience here, we are in times of Corona. And so the burden of leadership has obviously been immense. And I called it being a chaos pilot, as we say.
Nice.
Yeah. And so in your opinion, how does one best lead through this situation at this time?
I think it's such an important question. All our lives are turned upside down in the last 6 months. And I spoke to a CEO recently and he said to me, 2020 is cancelled. I replied, I disagree. Actually, I think this year is a once in a lifetime opportunity to not just return to work, but reimagine a future that is more agile, more daring, more resilient. This is an opportunity to actually feel more alive. And a big question for our viewers and our listeners is, how alive do you feel at work? How alive did you feel? How alive do you feel now? And I think this is an opportunity not just to return, but to do a big reset. It's not easy. It's not easy. I'm going to confess right at the beginning. I had COVID at the end of February, and it hit me like a 100-kilometer truck. I was out of action for about 3 weeks, and I was very close to going to hospital. And when you have time to reflect, when you're suffering, you really get to practice gratitude and appreciate that you are alive. So I don't think this period is intensely challenging for all of us. But I think we put a positive hat on, a Viking spirit hat on. This is a chance to actually make change happen at speed and scale.
Yeah, I'm with you. And so you mentioned the Viking hat. So obviously there's one concept which I love. But really, how should a leader approach it? Like how practically somebody who has been, going steady kind of with their business, and now all of a sudden this cold shower and complete shock and trauma, and now you're going, I need to lead through a pandemic and the usual business stuff. Like, what do you do? What's an approach to this?
Here's 3 really practical strategies to turn adversity into advantage, to turn disruption into opportunity. The first is, I think, now more than ever, you've got to walk your why. Why is it that you do what you do? And are you doing it? Are you exceeding, meeting, or falling behind on your purpose? Why is this important in a pandemic or during chaos? Well, it's a simplifier. It helps you cut through the noise, cut through the hype, cut through the hysteria. It's an energizer. The research coming out of MIT shows that when you walk your why, your purpose, you feel more energized. And it's an energizer. You do actually feel more energy when you're walking your why. So strategy number 1 is launch your purpose. And you need to understand what is your why do you do what you do? And does that give you meaning and impact? Strategy number 2 is community. We need to feel a sense of belonging. Who's your posse? Who's in your tribe? They're your support network and your intelligence network. You can grab ideas. And of course, remember the important message. Ideas travel faster through networks than through hierarchy. Finally, number 3 is always be in a perpetual state of becoming. This comes from Oliver Sacks, the psychiatrist. And he said, to thrive as a human being, remember, we live for about 960 months. That's just 80 years of age. So you want to thrive here, not just survive. And so the final strategy is always being in a state of becoming, a perpetual state. And what I mean by that is, when's the last time you learned something for the first time?
Yes, I love it. And I love the hand gestures. They're coming up.
Here's a quick hack for our viewers. If you can do this, you're half fluent in Italian. Next time you go to Italy, you don't have to speak, you just do this. You'll get your espresso much more quickly.
That's incredible. And I like it. But do you believe that this whole leadership talk, is it? And
there's a lot of hype.
Is it a hype?
Look, there's a lot of hype out there. And I think leadership and the leadership model is completely broken. The last 200 years of leadership history has been about the hero leader. It's been about hierarchy and power and really dominance. It's been about micromanagement. We're at this inflection point now. We need to move from micromanagement to macro management. And we need to move from complexity to simplicity. And we need to move from hierarchy to unbossed. Unbossed means basically empowering everybody to do their best work, not just their busy work. I was involved in an initiative recently with Novartis, and they've launched a program called Unbossed. The idea is We now need everybody to really be thinking like a leader, not just one leader or two leaders, but everybody leading themselves. And for me, that's really inspirational. I think now it's about value creation, not value extraction. And it's about ROI, not return on investment. Are you ready for this, Saana?
Yeah.
Return on intelligence, return on ideas, return on imagination. This is my new definition of ROI. Imagine if organizations started measuring ROI in terms of return on intelligence and return on ideas, and everybody had a voice to speak up and ask a question and bring their true, authentic selves to the job. This would be a much richer, authentic, values-driven world. And this is why I write about leadership.
I love it, and I appreciate it. I just want to challenge you on one thing, if that's all right. So there are those in this that signed up to this webinar who I know are running startups or running SMEs. They're at a place where they are surviving, not thriving. And so, yes, and then they move into perhaps micromanagement as a technique, as a style to kind of work through it. But help me understand, is this something like, should they actually apply this type of thinking when they're in that space, or is this something that's reserved to the privileged?
It's a brilliant question. And the key word is context. Leadership is contextual, it's cultural, and it's situational. A couple of years ago, I got to interview Jan Koum, the founder of WhatsApp. This is before he actually sold it to Facebook for $19.8 billion. And he only had 18 people in the company. And he was a fascinating entrepreneur. Like most entrepreneurs, he was type A, extremely results driven, and his empathy levels were very low. And the way I helped him was to become more aware of his blind spots. I think if we distill the essence of good leadership, whether you're in a startup or a 10,000 person organization, it's about knowing your blind spots. And so the blind spot could be lack of empathy, lack of strategic awareness, lack of clarity. What are our blind spots? Psychologist Daniel Kahneman, he says we're blind to our own blindness. And so I think this is where the leadership can help. If it's contextualized and aligned with the challenges and the inflection points and the risks of the startup or the large organization, you can adapt it and help leaders, whatever they're doing, become aware of their blind spots and then become a better version of themselves.
Nice. Okay. So that wasn't like a hard no on that. It was like, you need to gauge what's going on. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
And we have Lorena that has already a question in the chat, which is exactly what I was thinking. So thank you for asking it. How do you learn what your blind spots are? Like, how do you identify them?
Yes, what a fantastic question. There's a couple of strategies. I think the first is sometimes we've got to hit pause. Today is the slowest that will ever be in our lifetime. Today is the slowest will ever be in our lifetime. How many times are you going to look at your mobile today? The reality is I visited a company in Silicon Valley. It's called Dopamine Labs. Can you believe that? That's the name of the company. And there's actually a great guy, he's on Netflix recently, called Tristan Harris, who talks about the dark side of technology. And according to his research, sometimes we're looking at our mobile, swiping, touching, clicking up to 2,000 times a day. That has an incredible impact on your attention. So strategy number one is take a pause. When's the last time you reconnected with yourself, went for a walk, went for a drive, meditated, slowed down? That's strategy number one. It's a very ancient human tactic. Take a strategic pause, breathe. That way, you're more likely to reconnect with your most inner self. Number two is ask for feedback. Who is in your posse? Who are your supporters? Who are your challengers? Use them. Leverage the value of those networks. Because if you ask them the question and there's a high value, high trust relationship, they're going to be able to provide you with useful, practical feedback that you can correct immediately. And then finally, number three, I think is be a reader. I think great leaders are readers. You know, what's your Quake book? What's the book that's moved your soul and made you feel more alive? when you read different books about different people, it doesn't have to be leadership books, by the way, and different books activate your imagination. And this research coming out of MIT again, a London Business School, shows that then when you read, you focus at a deeper level. A lot of the time now, we're just focusing on a shallow level, reacting all day long. A deep level is a much more spiritual level. And that's where you're more likely to reconnect and again, become more aware of your blind spots.
Oh la la, okay. So
Mamma mia.
yeah. And you're really, especially the second tip about asking for feedback, and then you're doing something that plays into the Lincoln effect. So when you do ask for feedback, it actually amplifies your relationship with the person that you're talking to.
Exactly.
So double whammy in a sense, which is fabulous. And talking about what you just said about slowing down, so I have a confession to make.
Tell me.
I got your book and I was reading through it at home. And as you know, I have an 8-month-old, and then I see, and just there's a lot happening. And I was going, oh my God, in the first couple of pages, this is so good. I packed my bag and then I walked out and I waved goodbye, and everyone's like, what's going on? I'm like, oh, my parents, so I'm gonna check into the hotel. So I can think about what he's saying by myself, undisturbed. And I spent 24 hours just reading through your book, taking notes, writing down strategies of what I could do. So that's how good and concise it is. And that's how important it was for me.
This is, this is the key. It's the attention. Our attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. And it's the way that we protect ourselves and protect others as well. In this time of hyper change, we need to really protect attention and give it the respect it deserves. Attention to ourselves, so inner attention, other attention to others, and outer attention, which is your industry and the operating environment that you work in. So three types of attention: inner, outer, and other.
Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely. And so you have Andrew here who asks a question, which an Airsoy that's also commenting on it. Airsoy says, because of social media, focusing on a book is becoming more difficult. Yes. And then we have Andrew who also talks about, like, how do you avoid burnout? Because the situation is really so much happening.
Burnout is in Japan, they call it karoshi. It means death at your desk from stress. But I came across the opposite recently in France. An employee managed to take their company to court for anticipation, bore out. Oh, this is a true story. An employee in Paris managed to successfully take their company to court for bore out, which is the opposite of burnout. They were just so bored with the job. So there are two extremes here. I think the burnout is a very real threat. And again, it comes back to doing the basics brilliantly. If you think about your life, you've got the physical side, the emotional side, the relationship side, the spiritual side, and you need to take care of all of them. You need to take care of all of them. I recently interviewed a 100-year-old lady who loves to learn. She was born in 1920, figure that. And she decided to go to university at the age of 83. And then she decided to do a master's and had a terrible stroke. But she had this Sisu spirit, Viking spirit, this word from Finland, Sisu, Viking spirit. And then at the age of 100, she had a family meeting, and the family were terrified. They thought, is she going to do a PhD? But she wanted to do a parachute jump. And when I interviewed her, I said, what's your secret? She said, be a learner, not a knower. Be a learner, not a knower. And she said, use learning. Learning is the way that you stay alive and curious. And actually, if you think about it, if the speed of automation, I think the ability to reinvent ourselves multiple times is a superpower.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I mean, I can't believe it. She's awesome.
What a great role model. You know, when you're feeling a bit tired, and you imagine that at the age of 83. Oh, let's apply to university. She was twice as old as the professor.
Incredible. Where can we find this interview?
So this interview actually is in my first book, The Leader's Mindset.
Good. There you go. Get the book. I want to tie it back to one quote. When we look at like employee engagement, just again, get practical.
Yes.
The manager era is over. Individuals expect more freedom, autonomy, and involvement in all aspects of their role. Now, hear this. If they don't like it, they vote with their feet.
Yes.
I love it.
I mean, this obviously depends on their circumstances. If there's a war with the war for talent, for example, I think if you're in an organization that really values humanity, and values high ROI, return on intelligence, and then it's about freedom and responsibility. And what I mean by that is, as complexity goes up, our ability to respond to that is diminished. So you can't keep controlling. Actually, rather than control, you need to give people context. So replace control with context. And you need to do three things really well at a practical level. You need to be enabled. So have you got the skills, the tools, the mindset, the heart set to do the job? You need to be energized. Have you mentally quit the job? I haven't told anybody. We've all been there. So you need to be energized, and you need to be excited and feel aligned with that vision and with that purpose. Purpose is a life enhancer. My research shows that when you have a strong purpose at an organizational level or at a personal level, it increases your longevity, your resilience, and your ability to cut through the noise.
Okay, good. I mean, there was one thing that you mentioned in your book, and I've read it that's even worse. So disengagement rates worldwide are around 85%. In the Middle East, they're actually higher.
I saw that.
Yeah. And so obviously when you do incremental things like that, even if you just move it down a few percentages, you're still
has a massive impact. Let's face it, we need to talk about the elephant in the room. Sometimes we have a scary boss, a psycho boss, or a scary boss. I remember once I had a boss who was called the Shadow. I'd be working at my laptop. All of a sudden, I'd feel this cold shiver go down my back. It would go really dark, strangely. I'd hear this breathing. And then the question, what are you doing, Terence? It was terrifying. Remember, most of us join companies, but we leave bosses. And that's one of the biggest sources of dissatisfaction, which is often people who become managers, sometimes they haven't received the right training. And so that's a really big blind spot and an opportunity.
How do you reinforce a why? So if you move from the theoretical, what practical things have you seen?
I saw a really great example of this within Formula One. It's all about purpose at speed and scale. And they do three things really well. First of all, you have to be able to articulate your why. So can you write down now for our viewers, what is your why at the deepest, most human level? Why do you do what you do? Most of us, I'm going to sound like Simon Sinek for a second. Most of us know what we do, and most of us know how to do it. But only a few of us know why we do what we do. Don't ask me to repeat that. But number one is, can you articulate your why? Number two, you need to activate it. Is it operationalized? Is it measured? Is it celebrated in a meaningful way? And then finally, number three is you need to accelerate it. And what I mean by that is you need to continue to ensure that it's recognized and valued. So it's the 3 A's to activating your purpose. And it's really worth doing because, in this 960 months of life that we have, I think one of the most important questions is, how alive do we feel? How alive do we feel in our personal lives and in our professional lives?
That was really practical. How about one of the things that you mentioned, so if we stay on the theme of employees and teams, you talk about like removing the annual review, the mid-year review, more frequent reviews, which is something, that has been mentioned previously, but in the companies you work with, like how many times are we talking about? What's a better approach or a different approach?
So think about how many times we look at our mobile. I mentioned this before. It's hundreds of times a day. The idea of just receiving feedback once or twice a year, where when it's like 6 or 9 months past the event, just seems like the dinosaur age. And so I think managers and leaders, but not only, we shouldn't just put all the responsibility on them. We need to MYM. Can you hear this? I need to whisper it. Is there anybody in the room? MYM, manage your manager. It's a very important technique. MYM, manage your manager. Did you get it? Yeah. If I get a power cut, please apologize to our viewers. People might be watching. But yes, we need to MYM, manage your manager. We need to manage upwards as well. We shouldn't just, hope is not a strategy. We shouldn't just hope for more feedback or hope for better meetings or hope for better communication on the vision. We need to get active at co-creation, and we need to manage up as well. And so to answer the question, I think it's dependent on what you need, where you're going, how fast you want to get there, and what works for you and the other person. If it's a weekly check-in over a coffee, fantastic. If it's once every 2 or 3 weeks, fantastic. I think you need to agree something that is a win-win for both parties. But remember, your managers are not mind readers. So we need to have a voice as well in our legacy.
Especially in this part of the world, now obviously coming from it is, everyone's the same. And then moving here to the Middle East, where it's very hierarchical, and then you have different influencers. This is something that is actually not super common. This is something that needs to be discussed. Like, okay, I get it, but we need to have a direct line of communication. It's not just top down. It can actually be like this as well. So that's
exactly.
We have a question from Hashim Al-Assad, and I think this is an interesting one. He says, I get a lot of comments from people that I should stop talking about my weaknesses in business. Any tips on how to remain honest without giving the impression that you're not competent?
What a great question. What a great question. I think, and there are different points of view on this, but actually, coming from a position of humility, I think is really powerful, and it defines us as human beings. So coming from a position of humility and being aware and being able to talk with confidence and humility about our blind spots, about the areas where we wish to strengthen. So the type of language we use as well, I think can create the different impressions. So I think coming from a position of humility and talking about areas for development or areas for strengthening sounds positive, sounds empowering. We don't necessarily have to use the word weakness. It could be an area for strengthening or an aspirational area that we want to give more attention to. So reframe the language that you use and be aware, don't hide these blind spots, but seek to develop them and strengthen them using your posse and using your own intuition.
Yes. And you did mention an Italian quote, Michelangelo. Do you remember where he talks about, let me see here, ancora imparo.
Ancora imparare. Yes, this means, never stop learning. Always be in a perpetual state of beta. You ask yourself, when's the last time you learned something for the first time? Or what's the bravest question you've asked in the last quarter? And what questions do you want to be remembered for? Questions are the answer. We put so much focus on fast answers and everyone knowing. And actually, this new inflection point we're in, it's about being comfortable with ambiguity. It's also about unknowing. We've got to unlearn. We've got to get rid of old mindsets, old assumptions about the world. And so the art of thriving in the 21st century is about agility, it's about adaptability, and it's about Sisu, the Viking spirit.
More about the Sisu situation, so that we're all on the same page here.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, since you did mention it, you're talking about like this lifelong learning. You also mentioned a day one, day two mentality for organizations. I thought that was such an instrumental concept in the book. And so can you please elaborate on that and the different companies that actually are doing it, which links to Hashim's question?
Great. Well, it's a key part of the book, which is this idea of a day one mindset versus a day one thinking versus day two thinking. And it's really sort of pioneered by Jeff Bezos at Amazon. And the big idea is when you're a day one thinker, it means every day is new, literally. You think like a startup, even if you're a 30-year-old legacy company. And so an example of a day one company is Microsoft. Microsoft is celebrating its 48th year. It's the same age as me, 48 years. Can you believe this? And Microsoft went through an existential crisis. It kind of fell out of favor in the noughties, but it managed to reinvent itself with Satya Nadella at the helm, a more empathetic leader, a leader who trusts his people. And that's an example of a day one. It's really a sort of way of thinking. So it's experimenting. It's, do you have a safe place to experiment? And so it's experimenting, it's learning, it's exploring, it's being curious. I'll give you another example. I worked with Pfizer, and they hosted a 1 month curiosity hackathon. So for 1 month, everybody in the company, and this is a big company, over 100,000 people, everybody was empowered to not follow their passion, follow their curiosity. And I define curiosity as the gap between what you know and what you want to know. And often as we get older, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Like, oh, I don't know, I don't need to know that anymore. And so practicing, so this is day one. This is the essence, the DNA of day one. Learning, exploring, experimenting. Every day is day one. And in fact, at Amazon, when you arrive at the office, outside of the building, it says day one. To remind everybody every day that this is not day whatever, we're always in day one mindset. Day two is the opposite. Inertia, back covering, legacy, getting trapped in legacy thinking. So broken business models, shifting mindsets that haven't been able to update themselves. Think about General Electric. This was a company pioneered by Thomas Edison, the inventor, 200-year legacy. 10 years ago, it was the most valuable company on the planet, had a market capitalization of over $400 billion. Today, his market cap is 45 billion. And it's a sad story of what can happen if you become a day two company. So day two is the opposite. It's inertia, it's taking success for granted. It's meaning that you don't need to change before you have to. And it's this mindset of, are you willing to start the new game before the old game is over?
I'm obviously going to print out a day one poster and just have it.
Yeah, so day one. I mean, we should all get into that mindset. You can do it. The great thing with this practical action, you can do it at a personal level, a family level. You do it for your family. You can even do it at a company level. So it's a really simple hack to make sure that we're feeling more alive every day and don't get trapped by the past. Learn from the past, but don't get trapped by it.
You're right. I mean, look, imagine if you, with your partner, you're treating it as the first date when you're all like, on your.
That's true, isn't it? If you think about why people split up, why they divorce, it's because they become day two. This could be a new offering, Saana, for us.
Absolutely right. So I'm gonna, if you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat or in the Q&A. I am gonna be moving into taking more questions from the group, so please prepare them. In parallel, I want to continue on this theme of the day one mentality, but now like the day one mentality on inflation. Like you talk a lot about 10x, and not only it's kind of been a buzzword. Let's be honest.
It has become a bit of a buzzword.
Yeah. So what happens with buzzword is you kind of park it, and you go, "Oh, this is for the Twitters. It's for Zuckerberg, not for me."
Yes.
But then the way you phrased it, I thought was interesting. You asked the question of how could I, like, if you put the perspective to how could I 10x a meeting, a performance review, or even the way I communicate?
Yes. Well, I can share a really great practical and local example in UAE. It's a fantastic founder and managing director of Ubisoft, the games developer. His name's Yannick Feller. And he's a 10x leader. What I mean by that is he understands that most meetings are broken. You know, we spend 50% of our lives in meetings, or now it's Zoom, we used to be face to face. And if we ask ourselves honestly, how useful were they? Were they relevant? Were they useful? Were they purpose driven? We struggle to find yeses. And so what Yannick does, very simple hack, is he wanted to get high ROI, return on intelligence, return on ideas, because that's the essence of a games developer. You can't just have 20% of the company thinking and the other 80% just working. We need everybody to bring their brains to the job. So what he did in his meetings was, first, he would do what's called intermittent meetings. It's a very simple hack. The research shows that if you give your attendees 10 minutes to just think about a problem, so to give them the time, the space to frame the problem and generate ideas or discussion points or questions or concerns, what you do is you raise the psychological safety of that meeting. And just for clarity for our viewers, psychological safety is a safe space where you can take interpersonal risk. You can speak up. You can disagree constructively. You can share a concern. Psychological safety. Most companies don't have it, or they don't have enough of it. That's the reality. So what he did was, rather than just say, what do you think? What do you think? Let's face it, that type of meeting style is very that rapid fire approach. Unless you're, Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, and you can respond and process really quickly. Most of the time, your inner critic's going to come, the self-imposter's going to come, your mind's going to go blank, or your face is going to go red, or your hands are going to go sweaty, or all of that's going to happen at once, and you're not going to have an answer. And so, what he's done in terms of 10xing his meetings is give them psychological safety, give them a space to think. So the quality of ideas and the quality of contributions is 10x higher, because everybody now is thinking and then contributing. And he doesn't do that for every meeting, but for specific meetings where he wants people to really think and contribute in a meaningful and energizing way, this 10x approach has worked wonders for him, to the point, and I can share this, he's now invited by other random companies to talk about this technique. He gets calls from companies around the world say, hey, Alec, we've heard your meetings are like on another level. Could you share a Zoom presentation with us? And this is what he's achieved. So he's a great example, a great role model of a 10x leader who 10x's all the different parts of the job that can become very repetitive and monotonous.
And this is particularly interesting where you have like introverts, or even like linking this to female. If you look at some of the bias.
Yes, we forget, they're forgotten sometimes.
So inviting it and framing the discussion that this is what's happening, it's incredibly useful. And you also
did you know that only 5% of leaders, global leaders, are women? Only 5% today. I mean, how can you? I interviewed an amazing managing director at MIT. Her name's Hala Hanna. In fact, I'm going to introduce her to you. I mean, she's an incredible lady from Beirut, super dynamic, and one of her passions is harnessing the power of diversity. That's diversity of experiences, diversity of attitudes, diversity of thinking. And I discovered that in the UK, on the FTSE 100, top 100 companies, there are 17 CEOs beginning with the name John.
Yeah, we've seen similar research. Well, Johnny boy, good for you, but we want more. So that's interesting. So these type of meetings, and you mentioned the AMA, Ask Me Anything.
Yes.
I love that. I love that.
This the AMA, the Ask Me Anything, is really, again, it's all about psychological safety. It's like innovation. It's like psychological safety. It's like 10x, they become buzzwords, don't they? They're used and used and used, and they lose their specificity, they lose their meaning. AMA is another simple hack. It's about not asking for psychological safety, but going first, modeling it first. You can't expect your team or your colleagues to do it if you're not doing it. So you have to show vulnerability. And in fact, in a way, this is what makes us more human. What I'm interested in the 21st century is elevating humanity, so that we are more authentic, more expressive, and we get to be more alive at work and in all our lives.
I get that. I see that. So Andrew asked a question with links to this one. So now we know what openness and psychological safety is like. Let's turn it around. What does like the day two mentality or the lack of the openness and psychological safety look like? Like how can a company kind of acid test and go, uh-oh?
It's another fantastic question, because the truth is every organization, even every startup, is a couple of days away from becoming day two. Mm-hmm. And what day two looks like in a very visual way is meetings for meeting's sake, vanity KPIs, internal focus. So, internal focus, it's not taking the competition for granted. For example, Blockbuster had the opportunity to buy Netflix, but they laughed. They said, why would we buy this little DVD company? They dismissed it. So it's about not getting trapped in your assumptions, not getting trapped by entropy, which is just doing things for doing them sake. So they become repetitive, routinized, and soul-sucking. It's about bureaucracy. I call it BMI. What's our BMI, everyone? Not body mass index, bureaucratic mass index. Bureaucratic mass index. My research shows that most organizations with 500 or more people have an average BMI score, bureaucratic mass index, of 68%. That means excessive levels of rules, protocols, and processes. It means you spend more of your time ticking boxes than actually doing value-driven work. So we need to fight complexity, not with complexity, but with simplicity. We need to be bureaucratic busters. These are the examples of day two. And it's, the default is we all become like that. It's, for example, if I don't clean the flat within 2 weeks, it's day two. So you need to stay day one to keep everything agile and nimble.
And is that mostly something that's championed quite often by one or two people, or is that something that like the whole organization you believe embrace?
Historically, it's usually individuals, but I believe to accelerate that process to become more day one, to kind of activate day one drivers or day one enablers, you really want to scale a culture. You want to scale a culture where it's about co-creation. It's about we, not me. It's about value and values. And I think these are the drivers of success to become day one in the 21st century. I discovered recently, I did some work with HSBC. They've reduced 42,000 job titles, 42,000 to 21,000. And I discovered, this is top secret between you and me, Saana. HSBC stands for how simple becomes complicated.
Oh my God.
And this came from the staff.
I hope you guys saw the abbreviation. How simple. HSBC. Okay. No, we won't tell anyone, I promise. All right. We have questions coming in left, right, and center, which is exciting. And we have a really detailed one. Ersoy says, my wife works for HSBC, by the way. We have a question from Brian, and he says, what steps can be taken before the meeting to make sure everyone makes the most out of it? I can't think of deciding the topic of the meeting, make sure how to like what structure for a meeting is optimal, basically.
It's a brilliant question, because we have to run meetings, of course we do, but I think you have to activate them in a really purposeful way. So again, if I use Yannick Feller, because he's the guru of meetings, he does two things. First of all, he's got a meeting wheel. So he's digitized the wheel, and on the wheel are the team's names in the meeting. And basically it's an electronic wheel that spins around automatically and stops randomly. And basically the person that stops that, they have to contribute. Now that can sound a bit scary, but that's the first bit, which maximizes contribution and interaction and injects a bit of fun, gamifies it. So it's not just listening to one person speak for 1 hour. Number two is before the meeting, he thinks about purpose, priorities, process, and payoff. Purpose, priorities, process, and payoff. So it's really high clarity, high direction, and you begin with the end in mind. You begin with the end in mind. And a really simple hack, which I've shared with my colleagues and teams along the road, is think about the alphabet. So A, B, C, the English alphabet, A, B, C, D, E. Every week when you have your meeting, just think of, go through it. So let's start with A. So let's say you've got a meeting coming up next week. Begin with A. So for that week, you're going to focus on A. And think about themes or topics or challenges beginning with A in the office. Attitude, autonomy. Can you think of any, Saana?
Autonomy, productivity.
Yeah, so you're thinking of topics beginning with the letter A, and you pick one, and then you go to the next week, and you've got B. So you think, okay, topics for this week: B, belonging, belief. Yeah, you see, look, it becomes fun. So this is one way of injecting serendipity, social connection, surprise. But of course, it depends on the meeting. Some meetings need to be by design, not just by accident. So I think you need to think about the biggest pain points. Don't fall in love with ideas, fall in love with pain, not literally. That's my Catholic side coming across. Fall in love with pain points. So what I mean by pain point is a process that's broken, a meeting that's not working, a protocol that no longer serves its purpose, a customer problem that won't go away. Fall in love and prioritize pain points on the inside and pain points that your customers face. And they become the source of focus for really empowering meetings.
Okay, I love that. So fall in love with like the problem, with the pain. I like it. As opposed to shying away or sweeping it under the rug or too busy.
The best products, the best services, the best business models come because of pain points. Uber, for example, because Travis Kalanick couldn't find a taxi in Paris. Tesla, Elon Musk, because he couldn't. All the cars were just polluting the planet. I recently met an entrepreneur who launched a meeting company. It's basically AI-driven assistant for organizing meetings. It's called X.AI. Our viewers and listeners can check it out, X.AI. Basically, his pain point was too many meetings. He was attending over 1,000 meetings a year, and he was spending 20% of his week rescheduling meetings. So that pain point became the source for his new business, which is X.AI. It's just received $20 million worth of investment as well. Don't fall in love with ideas, fall in love with problems.
Ah, gorgeous. And so are there any foundational ways which we can and should be preparing to embrace disruption?
Really good question. And I think there are some big strategies. So for me, like change, it used to happen as a breeze. Now it feels like a category 5 typhoon. We've got some big disruptors on the horizon, blurring of industry lines, economic and geopolitical uncertainty, disruptive technologies, AI, nanotech, biotech, shrinking of company and product lifespans, and a global pandemic. So we're in this kind of operating environment now where I think not taking a risk is a risk. And I think there are 3 practical strategies. One is what I call think bold. So thinking 10x, not 10%. And so build a 10x mindset. in your day-to-day and be day one, not day two. Number two is brave. Most of the problems in the world are not because of a lack of IQ, they're because of a lack of courage. Courage to speak up, courage to make a difference, courage to say no. What's your no strategy? We've all got a yes strategy, but if you haven't got a no strategy, it's impossible to be effective. It's impossible to get great work done. That's strategy number two, brave, courage. And strategy number three is what I call go beyond your limits. Replace fear with curiosity. Fear can become our limits. So replace fear with curiosity. And like the 100-year-old lady who I interviewed, be a learner, not a knower.
Yes, I love it. I mean, with regards to, I love what you said about having a no strategy, because honestly, it's highly disregarded. And we discussed this years ago. And what I did is I wrote down, like, this is our mission. So any new ideas and new projects, the question was, is it a yes in relationship to our mission? And if it was a no, even though we might love it, and we love the new idea, we just still had to honor our main mission statement and move forward with that. And that rule it made it easier to make decisions. So having
Yes. It's really, at a personal level or a company level, it's coming back to this purpose. It's a simplifier, it's a clarifier, it's an energizer. And most companies as well, don't have a no strategy. You can tell straight away. I can see straight away when I go into organizations and facilitate a strategy event, for example, and there's about 100 initiatives. And you don't have to be a mathematician to work out that 8 hours is only 480 minutes. There's only so much time you can do in 480 minutes.
Yeah. A lot of these examples are easily applicable.
Yes.
And generally speaking, but I want you just to simplify, from my mind at least, if you have seen any service-based companies, or even like a smaller scale, but let's stick to service, where they have applied this type of thinking successfully.
Yeah, so for example, IKEA, they're an organization. What a fantastic company, this incredible legacy. Could be very easy for them to become day two. But what they're doing at the moment, especially over the last 18 months, is really optimizing their service model. So they've realized that the world has changed, more predictive, more personalized, more digital. And so they've had to pivot and really redesign their processes, their service delivery model. They're acquiring a number of startups, including a drone company, for example, in order to digitize, in order to really move from doing digital. Most companies are doing digital. Part of what they do is digital. They all like to talk about it. It's a badge of honor. But I want our viewers to think about the difference between doing digital and being digital. And being digital is really being digital at the core. It's a mindset and a heart set and a skill set. And so the service delivery model at IKEA is going through a massive, 3 years worth of transformation in 3 months right now. And actually the pandemic has been an accelerator of that. Ironically, in some ways, although the pandemic has been absolutely tragic, it is tragic, in some ways it has been an accelerant as well. Another example is in the UK, all the supermarkets. Before the pandemic, you could go to the supermarket anytime you want, and any age could go. What the pandemic has done has made supermarkets more empathetic. They've started to put humans before money. So between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. every day, only seniors are allowed into the supermarket. So seniors and a certain demographic are allowed in, only them. So they have the space, the safety, the shop. And what a great initiative. Why didn't we think of that before? So this is another example of where service delivery models are being engineered and innovated and optimized.
So sweet. I like it.
More compassionate.
Definitely. So we have a question which I believe is from Nora. And I like to like this is one of the good final questions for us to wrap up with. And she says, you're basically saying that curiosity leads to success on all levels and reaching our ultimate potential due to, I'm going to paraphrase this, constantly be wondering around how things are. So she's saying, is curiosity one of these things that will help us reach our full potential?
It's a really important question. And like everything, there are caveats and we have to frame it in the right way. So I think it's, the key success factor, first of all, is really to have a clear purpose, to be clear about where you want to make an impact, where you derive meaning, what your legacy would like to be like. For example, an example of curiosity when it can work well is a 16-year-old student I met at MIT recently. Her name's Emma Yang. She's only 16, a child prodigy. And her grandmother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, a terrible affliction. And over the next 10 years, over 150 million people around the world will be diagnosed with Alzheimer's. It's a ticking time bomb. Emma Yang used her intellectual ability and her curiosity to create an app called Timeless, which uses facial recognition, geotagging, so you can see where the grandmother's walking, and the family can stay in touch. Just received $10 million worth of investment. She's only 16 years old. Curiosity is that kind of intersection. If you've got purpose, curiosity, and courage, you can imagine the triangle, purpose, curiosity, and courage. This is the sweet spot to make life magical and make things happen. And so this would be my recommendation, not just curiosity, but curiosity plus purpose multiplied by Sisu.
Here. All right, look at this thought leadership. Amazing. Good. So I'm incredibly mindful of your time. I think we have received so many practical tips, ideas, strategies, mindsets, heart sets to actually take from this conversation. And there are plenty more from the books. I'm going to say that in which you can read and learn more. And also, as mentioned, Terence does consult and speak and share knowledge to organizations about these types of topics and does it in a hyper bespoke manner. So of course, please feel free to reach out to Mina Speakers. It would be so delighted to help you. With that said, I also want to thank everyone.
Yes, thank you.
You are future-proofing yourself, and that is a perfect way of enhancing your skill set. Terence, I thank you so much for giving us this 1 hour. I'm really grateful for all the knowledge and insights. And
it's been a pleasure, Saana. Thank you for hosting me.
My pleasure. Everyone else, thank you for your comments. I wish you a wonderful continuation of your day. Keep rising onwards and upwards. All right. Take care.
Okay, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.